My name is Juth. I am 29 years old and I work as a freelance graphic designer in Seattle. My husband, Ethan, is 32, a software engineer at a major tech company. From the outside, our lives might have looked ordinary, quiet evenings filled with the soft hum of his laptop, deadlines I rushed to meet, and the rhythm of two people trying to build something steady together. For nearly a year, we had tried and failed to start a family. Each negative test left me emptier than the last, yet Ethan's steady reassurances kept me standing. Then, almost when I had stopped expecting it, the news arrived. I was pregnant. Joy spilled into every corner of our home, a fragile hope blooming inside me. What I didn't know then was that this single spark of happiness would ignite storms I never imagined facing, storms that would test not only our marriage but myself. If you're still listening, we want to sincerely thank you for spending your time with us. Truly means a lot. We'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments and let's see how far this message has reached. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, I highly recommend doing it now so you won't miss any of our upcoming stories. These aren't just ordinary stories, they're filled with meaningful life lessons that can inspire, teach, and stay with you long after the video ends. Hit that subscribe button and join our growing community. Conflict begins. It started on a Saturday evening at my mother's house. The dining room was warm, filled with the glow of string lights draped across the windows, and the smell of roasted chicken lingered in the air. I had waited for this exact moment, the perfect chance to share our news. When I finally spoke, my voice trembled with excitement. Ethan and I are expecting. The room erupted. My uncles raised their glasses, my aunts clapped their hands, and my mother covered her mouth as tears welled up in her eyes. For a brief, glittering moment, I felt like the center of a constellation of love. Except for Chloe. She sat across from me, 21 years old, in her black leather jacket and a cocktail in hand. A bartender by trade, she was used to being the life of the party, but that night her face froze like glass. Her eyes, sharp and stormy, fixed on me as though I had just stolen something priceless. Then, with a sudden movement, she slammed her cocktail glass down so hard the rim cracked against the table. The room went silent. "How dare you?" she shouted, her voice slicing through the joy like broken glass. "I was supposed to be the first. You stole this from me." I blinked in disbelief. At first, I thought it was a joke, one of her dramatic outbursts she'd regret later. But the tremor in her voice and the fury blazing in her eyes told me she meant every word. My mother rushed to soothe her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Chloe, sweetheart, you're still young. You're not ready for this yet." But Chloe shoved her hand away, standing abruptly. The room shrank under her rage. She grabbed her purse, her voice trembling with rage as she hurled her ultimatum. "If you don't get rid of that baby within a week, I'll go to the police." The threat hung in the air like a toxic cloud. And then she was gone, heels striking the floor like hammers as the door slammed shut behind her. The morning after. The next morning, when the rain still clung to Seattle's gray skies, I woke to the sound of pounding at the front door. Ethan, still in his worn t-shirt and shorts, opened it, and there she was. Chloe stood on our porch, hair damp from the drizzle, clutching a thick stack of papers. Without a word, she thrust them into Ethan's chest so forcefully that he stumbled. Pages fluttered onto the porch like falling leaves. "They're appointments," she said coldly, her voice echoing down the quiet street. 3 different clinics in Seattle. I booked them all. She just has to pick one. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains. My stomach twisted with shame and disbelief. Ethan bent down, picked up the papers, then tore them to shreds in front of her, the pieces scattering in the wind. "You're insane," he muttered, his jaw tight. That was all it took. Chloe's face contorted with rage. She screamed into her phone, her words sharp and frantic. "Fine! If you won't listen, the whole family will." Within hours, my mother called, her voice trembling. Chloe had demanded a full family meeting. By Sunday, 20 relatives crammed into my mother's living room, tension thick enough to choke. The family showdown. The living room, usually cozy with its floral curtains and the old fireplace, now felt like a courtroom. Chloe had taken center stage, standing in front of the hearth like a prosecutor. A projector hummed softly, casting light on the wall where she had prepared, unbelievably, a 12-slide PowerPoint presentation. She clicked through slides with the confidence of someone delivering a keynote address. Charts, photos, bold statements filled the screen as she outlined her case. That my pregnancy had stolen her dream of being the first mother in the family, that I had deliberately robbed her of her special role. I sat on the couch beside Ethan, stunned by the surreal theater of it all. My hands trembled in my lap. Part of me wanted to laugh at the absurdity, but another part ached at the sheer venom in her eyes. When she finished, she turned to the family with tears streaming down her face. "If Juth doesn't end this pregnancy before Monday," she cried, pointing at me with shaking hands, "I'll cut every single one of you out of my life." The room held its breath. Then Aunt Sarah, calm and measured, stood. As a lawyer, her words carried weight. "Chloe," she said gently, "there is no law, no principle that requires Juth to end her pregnancy for your sake. What you're asking is not only unreasonable, it's cruel." Chloe's sobs grew louder. She stamped her foot like a child denied a toy. "You don't understand. She ruined everything." That moment, something remarkable happened. 20 voices rose in unison. My cousins, uncles, aunts, even my mother all spoke together. "Goodbye, Chloe." Chorus was firm, final. Chloe froze, her mouth open in shock. Then she let out a guttural cry, grabbed her laptop, and stormed out, tears streaming down her cheeks. The front door slammed so hard the walls rattled. And just like that, she was gone. For months afterward, there was only silence. No texts, no calls, no sudden visits. The family dinners resumed, quieter but lighter, as though a storm cloud had finally passed. Yet deep inside, I knew it wasn't the end. With Chloe, it never was. The unexpected appearance. 7 months passed. By then, the weight of pregnancy was both visible and undeniable. Ethan and I had been carefully preparing for the baby's arrival, assembling the crib, folding tiny onesies, learning how to swaddle from endless YouTube videos. Despite the turbulence with Chloe, I had started to feel a cautious peace. Family tensions had cooled into silence. I told myself maybe she had moved on. That illusion shattered at my baby shower. The restaurant was perched along Seattle's waterfront, its glass windows overlooking the gray sweep of the river. Friends and family gathered around tables decorated with pastel balloons, the scent of buttercream frosting drifting from the cake in the corner. Laughter filled the air, soft music hummed from the speakers, and for the first time in months I felt lighthearted, safe, celebrated. Then the doors swung open. Chloe stepped in. Her entrance was deliberate, theatrical. She wore jeans stretched tightly across her hips, but all eyes went to her belly, swollen, unmistakably pregnant. Her t-shirt screamed in bold block letters, "The first grandchild is coming soon." The room fell into stunned silence. Forks froze midway to lips. My mother, standing at the cake table, dropped the knife with a sharp clang against porcelain. Chloe smiled like a queen entering her coronation. "I have an announcement," she said, her voice carrying through the stunned room. "I'm pregnant too. And I'm due 2 weeks before Juth." A collective gasp rippled through the guests. She turned sideways, thrusting her belly forward as though to prove her dominance. Her hand rested on the curve, her eyes locked on mine with a glittering challenge. I forced a smile, though my insides twisted into knots. "That's unexpected, Chloe." "Congratulations." Her smirk deepened, and she leaned closer, her words slipping like poison into my ear. "The date doesn't matter," she whispered. "I'll make sure my baby comes first." "You'll see." Her grip on my hand was firm, almost bruising. Then she pulled back, basking in the shock she had detonated, while the rest of the family scrambled to recover the shattered mood. Chloe's reckless plan. 3 days later, the phone rang. My mother's voice shook on the line, broken by sobs. "Juth, you won't believe this. Chloe, she's doing something terrible." Through her tears, the story spilled out like a nightmare. Chloe, in her obsession to outpace me, had ordered dangerous labor-inducing chemicals from a shadowy Eastern European website. She believed if she forced her body into early labor, she could win the race to deliver the first grandchild. But her recklessness didn't end there. On Craigslist, she had found a woman advertising herself as a former nurse from the Philippines. Chloe paid her in cash and begged her to perform a C-section in her apartment living room. The woman, horrified, refused, pointing out Chloe's pregnancy was only at 34 weeks, far too early for a safe delivery. But Chloe's desperation boiled into madness. She allegedly threatened to cut herself open with a kitchen knife if no one helped. According to my mother, what happened next was chaos. In her mania, Chloe sterilized a box cutter with vodka, declaring she would do the surgery herself. The so-called nurse panicked, calling emergency services. By the time paramedics arrived, Chloe was already bleeding, her body convulsing in shock. The result was catastrophic. Her son, Liam, was delivered prematurely, tiny and fragile, his skin tinged blue, his cries faint. He had lost significant blood during the reckless attempt, and doctors rushed him into the NICU where machines now breathed for him. Chloe herself nearly died. The damage to her uterus was irreversible. Doctors were forced to perform an emergency hysterectomy. She would never carry another child. The phone call from the hospital. 2 nights later, as I sat at home folding baby clothes, the phone rang again. Ethan answered, his face paling as he listened. He handed me the receiver silently. "Juth," Chloe's voice was faint, muffled by the hiss of oxygen. She sounded like a ghost, her words trembling with accusation. "This is all your fault. My son is dying because you refused to wait. Because you stole this from me." Tears pricked my eyes. "Chloe, listen to yourself. I didn't cause this. You." But she cut me off with a strangled cry. "You did. If you had loved me, if you had cared about me, you would have ended your pregnancy. You forced me to do this. You made me ruin everything." The line went dead. I sat frozen, phone clutched in my hand, unable to breathe. A family divided. The fallout fractured us all. Some relatives were horrified by Chloe's descent into madness, calling her reckless, unstable, selfish. They said no one could blame me for refusing such an absurd demand. But others turned their grief into resentment against me. "If you had just waited," one aunt said bitterly, "she wouldn't have been driven to this." Another, her voice sharp with judgment, declared, "Maybe you should consider ending your pregnancy for the sake of peace." The suggestion sliced through me like a blade. Here I was, 8 months pregnant, clinging to the hope of a safe delivery, and still I was being asked to erase my child's existence for Chloe's sake. Ethan exploded in fury at the gathering, his voice shaking with rage. "Are you listening to yourselves? You're blaming her for Chloe's insanity? You think sacrificing our child will fix this? Shame on all of you." The room dissolved into shouting, accusations flying across the table, years of sibling rivalry and unspoken jealousies spilling into the open. Our once tight family circle had split into 2 camps, each convinced of its righteousness. The only point of agreement was this: Liam, innocent and fragile, deserved every chance to live. He became the reluctant bridge in our fractured clan, the tiny, voiceless infant tethered to machines, his survival binding us all to a fragile sense of duty. A silent night. That night, I lay awake in bed, my hands cradling my own belly, feeling the kicks of the life growing inside me. Contrast cut me in two. Inside the hospital, Liam fought for his life, while inside me, my child thrived, shielded from the chaos that surrounded us. I thought of Chloe's words, her endless accusations, and wondered if she truly believed them or if grief had simply devoured her reason. Either way, the damage was done. Her body was broken, her future altered forever. And somehow, she still looked at me as the villain in her story. The storm Chloe had unleashed was far from over. I could feel it pressing at the edges of my world, threatening to drown me in guilt, rage, and sorrow. But as I laid my hand on my belly, feeling the steady rhythm of my baby's heartbeat beneath my skin, I whispered to myself, "I will protect you, whatever it takes." And I knew then this was only the beginning. The threat continues. By the time I was admitted to the hospital to prepare for delivery, I had convinced myself that Chloe's recklessness must have burned itself out. She had already lost so much: her health, her future ability to bear children, and nearly her son. Surely, I thought, that would be enough to stop her. I was wrong. Chloe lingered in the hospital corridors like a shadow. Between the NICU, where her premature son Liam was still fighting for his fragile life, and the maternity wing, where I was waiting to give birth, she drifted constantly, her eyes never leaving my stomach. The intensity of her gaze felt invasive, obsessive, as if she believed my unborn child still belonged to her in some twisted way. Nurses whispered about her in low voices. She asked intrusive questions: when is Juth scheduled to deliver? Where will the baby be transferred? How long will security wristbands stay on infants? Their discomfort grew, and so did mine. Ethan noticed the way my hands trembled whenever I saw her. Normally calm, methodical, almost detached in a crisis, he changed overnight. He carried a small notebook everywhere, scribbling down details of Chloe's movements and conversations. He asked to meet with the hospital's head of security. And in a decision that both terrified and comforted me, he created a secret password: pineapple. If anything went wrong, if there was even the slightest sign of danger, he would say that word, and the staff would whisk our baby to a secure room where Chloe could never reach her. The hospital responded decisively. My patient file was locked under a special security code, meaning staff would not disclose even the room number without my personal authorization. Security guards began monitoring the hallways, and Chloe's photo was pinned behind the front desk. But she didn't stop. One night, I woke to the sound of raised voices outside my room. My heart pounded as Ethan opened the door a crack. There she was, Chloe, arguing with two guards, trying to slip into the maternity wing using a visitor's badge from the previous day. Her voice carried down the hall. "I have a right to see my sister. I'm family. You can't keep me away." The guards blocked her path. They had recognized her from the photo I had personally provided, the one I had hesitated to share because part of me still wanted to protect her dignity. But in that moment, I felt only gratitude. The shouting escalated until police officers were called. A social worker joined them, listening carefully as staff recounted everything, from the shattered cocktail glass months ago to the whispered threats at my baby shower. Every detail was written down, every incident cataloged. The next morning, we filed for an emergency restraining order. Chloe was legally forbidden from approaching within 600 feet of me, Ethan, or our child. She was also prohibited from contacting us in any way. The weight of that court order was both heavy and liberating. It meant recognition that the danger was real, but also acknowledgement that Chloe, my own sister, had become someone I needed protection from. The day of birth. At 7:24 a.m., after hours of labor that blurred into exhaustion and pain, my daughter entered the world. Emma. The name tasted soft and hopeful on my lips as the nurse placed her on my chest. She was perfect, warm, wrinkled, her tiny cry stronger than I imagined possible. Ethan sobbed openly, tears streaking his face as he kissed both of us. For all his composure, for all his notebooks and plans, he was undone by the sight of his daughter's first breath. Emma's ankle was secured with a small security tag, a tiny bracelet that beeped if removed. Soon after, we were escorted to a discreet recovery room, one without a nameplate on the door, fitted with cameras and accessible only to staff with clearance. I felt like we were living in a fortress, but it was a necessary one. Yet even there, the storm continued to swirl outside. Chloe's public outcry. Hours after Emma's birth, Chloe unleashed her fury on Instagram. She posted a photo of herself in her hospital bed, tubes still taped to her arms, her face pale but defiant. The caption accused me of stealing her chance to be a mother first. She claimed I had forced her into the reckless surgery that nearly killed her son. She ended with a plea for sympathy. Pray for Liam, who suffers because of my selfish sister. Post spread quickly among our extended family and friends. Some commented with heart emojis and words of support for her, echoing her claim that I had been selfish, that I could have spared her pain if only I had waited. Others, horrified, argued that Chloe needed psychiatric intervention, not sympathy, that her actions had endangered not just herself but her child. The division deepened. Relatives texted me, some begging me to make peace, others warning me to protect Emma at all costs. The harassment didn't end with social media. The hospital reported that someone posing as a relative repeatedly called the nurses' station, fishing for my room number. I'm her cousin, the voice would insist. But each time they failed the security question, the code word that only Ethan and I had chosen. The sense of siege grew heavier when the local news caught wind of Chloe's story. Somehow, details of her failed home C-section leaked. Anchors on the evening broadcast spoke gravely of a tragic case of a desperate woman attempting at-home surgery. Porters camped outside the hospital, their cameras ready for a glimpse of either Chloe or me. The hospital's PR department warned us not to answer any questions, not to open ourselves to speculation or blame. Question of Liam. Meanwhile, Liam remained in the NICU. Tiny, intubated, fighting for every breath, his presence loomed over all of us. Social workers from Child Protective Services approached us delicately, explaining that Chloe's parental rights might be suspended. If Liam survives, one of them said softly, he will need stable guardianship. Would you and your husband consider adopting him? Question hung in the air, heavy and impossible. I looked at Ethan. His jaw clenched, his eyes hardened. He shook his head immediately. No, absolutely not. The social worker frowned. May I ask why? Because Chloe is still out there, Ethan said firmly. Because she still believes my wife ruined her life. Bringing her son into our home would make us permanent targets. We can't raise Emma in fear. We can't protect two infants from her obsessions. I said nothing, torn between guilt and relief. The thought of Liam, innocent, helpless, blameless, aching for a chance at life while his mother spiraled deeper into madness clawed at my conscience. Yet Ethan was right. I could barely carry the weight of protecting Emma. I could not shoulder both. Living in the eye of the storm. Nights blurred together after that. Nurses came and went, checking Emma's vitals, while Ethan sat awake in the corner, notebook in hand, recording every unusual sound, every suspicious call, every mention of Chloe's name. I rocked Emma against my chest, her soft breath steady against my skin, and wondered how my sister had transformed into my enemy. I remembered Chloe as a little girl, piggyback rides, secret giggles, the smell of cinnamon rolls on Saturday mornings. Now those memories felt like ghosts, pale echoes of someone who no longer existed. The storm Chloe had created wasn't just about rivalry anymore. It had seeped into every corner of our lives. The hospital's guarded doors, the media's hungry eyes, the family's fractured loyalties. And yet, as I kissed Emma's tiny forehead, I knew one thing with absolute clarity. Whatever Chloe tried next, whatever storms she stirred, she would not take this from me. Not my child. Not my future. Aftermath and recovery. The diagnosis finally came, though it felt less like an answer and more like an echo of everything we had endured. Chloe was declared to be suffering from postpartum psychosis, a disorder so fierce and unpredictable that it had turned her grief into obsession, her despair into menace. The state transferred her to a specialized treatment center in Portland, 2 hours south of Seattle. She would remain there for at least 6 months under strict observation, the restraining order still intact, like a thin but crucial wall between us and the chaos she carried. For the first time in months, I could breathe. Liam, fragile, tiny, his breath shallow but stubborn, began to heal in the NICU. Doctors warned us that he might face developmental delays, his early entrance into the world shadowed by oxygen deprivation and trauma. Yet he was alive, a survivor in his own right. Eventually, Ethan's parents in Oregon offered to adopt him. Their home was calmer, steadier, and removed from the vortex of Chloe's instability. Agreeing to this was bittersweet. Part of me ached at the thought of the little boy growing up away from his sister. But we knew the limits of our strength. Protecting Emma meant being honest about what we could not carry. Ethan, always meticulous, took the lead in drawing boundaries with family. He scheduled a Zoom call where he laid out our new rules. Communication would be limited to 1 email update per month. No surprise visits. No forwarding details to Chloe. His voice was calm but steely, the kind of tone that left no room for negotiation. Predictably, some relatives bristled. They accused us of cruelty, of punishing Chloe during her weakest hour. But Uncle David, a retired police officer, cut through their protests. He reminded everyone that mental illness may explain behavior but does not erase responsibility. Chloe's threats and intrusions had been real, dangerous, and unlawful. His words anchored me in the face of lingering guilt. Meanwhile, my mother began her own quiet reckoning. She started therapy, joining a support group for parents of adult children with mental illness. For years, she had brushed aside Chloe's volatility, her rages, her unpredictable attachments, her spiraling moods. Now she was forced to face the truth. Ignoring the signs had allowed Chloe's instability to grow unchecked. I saw regret flicker in her eyes, but also relief, as though finally naming the darkness was the first step toward reclaiming her own peace. The woman who had performed Chloe's reckless cesarean at home did not escape justice. She was sentenced to 5 years in prison for practicing medicine without a license. Chloe herself would face charges too, though the courts would wait until her mind was stable enough to comprehend the proceedings. It was strange, knowing that accountability was finally moving through the system, even as the wounds she left behind still ached raw. The journey into motherhood. Amid the wreckage, I found slivers of grace. At the public library near our home, I stumbled upon a weekly circle of new mothers. We sat in a sunlit room, our babies bundled against our chests, trading tips about sleep training and diaper rash. In that space, I was not the woman whose sister tried to steal her baby. I was just Juth, another tired, milk-stained mother learning as I went. Each morning, I pumped extra breast milk and delivered it to the NICU for Liam. I did not visit him directly, keeping myself at a protective distance, but offering what nourishment I could. It was my silent way of saying, I see you. I care for you. Even if I cannot be your mother, I will not abandon you. Our home transformed into a fortress. Security cameras framed the porch. The locks were reinforced. Ethan made it a ritual each night, checking every window, bolting every door. First, it felt suffocating, like living in a cage. But then Emma would stir, her tiny fists curling against my chest, and I realized we weren't imprisoned, we were shielded. Safety was not paranoia, it was love in action. And in Emma's heartbeat, steady and innocent, I discovered something I had almost lost: hope. 5 lessons I learned. Looking back, I know this story is more than drama. It's a series of lessons carved into my heart, ones I want to share with anyone listening, especially those who have weathered storms of their own. Lesson 1. Boundaries are not cruelty, they are survival. For too long, I felt guilty for pushing Chloe away. I thought love meant endless tolerance. But I learned that true love for my child meant drawing the line and keeping it firm. Boundaries protect life. They are an act of courage, not coldness. Lesson 2: mental health deserves vigilance, not silence. I watched my mother regret all the moments she dismissed Chloe's struggles as mood swings. Silence does not cure. Denial does not heal. If someone in your family shows signs of instability, speak up early, seek help, and don't look away. Lesson 3: resilience is built in community. The library group reminded me that healing isn't solitary. When we sit in circles, sharing sleepless nights and small victories, we remember we are not alone. In weakness, connection becomes strength. Lesson 4: preparation is power. Ethan's insistence on passwords, codes, and security once felt excessive to me. But when danger came, those measures saved us. Preparedness is not paranoia, it is foresight, the discipline that turns fear into readiness. Lesson 5: gratitude is the anchor. Every time I hold Emma, every time I hear her soft breaths, I am reminded that joy can still live beside pain. Gratitude does not erase hardship, but it roots us, keeping our hearts steady when storms return. Closing reflections. I know the story isn't over. Chloe's future remains uncertain. Liam's health may hold challenges ahead. But within our walls, within the rhythms of diapers and late-night feedings, we are building something steady, something whole. If you've listened to my story, I hope you carry these lessons with you. Perhaps you've faced your own version of chaos, a family member whose struggles consumed more than they gave, a storm that tested your strength. Remember, boundaries, vigilance, community, preparation, and gratitude are the tools that rebuild a life. And if my journey resonated with you, I ask for something small but powerful. Share your own experiences in the comments. Your resilience might be the light someone else needs. Like this story if you believe in the strength of family and the importance of speaking the truth. Subscribe to stay connected as we continue building a community where survival becomes wisdom and scars become maps toward healing. Because no matter how dark the night, there is always a way forward, and sometimes it begins with telling the story out loud.